Hi guys, this is Christine, your relationship and mindset master doctor and your leverage for change. So today I want to speak about the attachment style, the dismissive avoidant. And I want to take it from a different perspective today. I want to kind of look at how it is that the caregivers attended to the children, to their child, this child who grew up to become, to have a dismissive an avoidant attachment, dismissive avoidant attachment style. And how later on what it would look like in this child, what the results of this type of caregiving will look like in a child who grew up in a home with caregivers who exhibited these types of behaviors. So one of the first thing that I want to, by the way guys, please help me out with my channel by liking this video, sharing it, and also subscribing to my channel, and also hit that notification bell, because when you do that, as soon as I upload a new video, you will be notified. So one of the first things is that the caregivers, they have difficulty in being present with the child. They're with the child, but they're not really. They could be sitting right beside the child, but the child is like a separate being. There's no touch, there's no warmth, there's no kind of connection, whether it be physical or emotional connection. So, and even when the caregiver is interacting with the child, there's still this distancing. And I will tell you that a lot of times the caregivers themselves have this attachment style of dismissive avoidant, right? They have their dismissive avoidant attachment style. So they just did not know how to show that kind of a connection, that kind of warmth. So now they're doing the same thing with their children. And that is why it's so important, guys, to really heal, especially when you're, for any kind of relationship with your partner, your wife, your children later on in life. Is very important, the way that, to heal from these attachment styles that can present problems in relationships. The next thing is the caregivers really causes that by the way they behave towards the child, the child feels isolated. They are, even when they're not secluded, they could be just they're basically left alone too much. So they could be in their room playing by themselves, or they could be, the parent is doing some other thing, but their child is not included. They're doing, say you're doing gardening. The caregivers are doing gardening. They are not including the child in that. If they're doing cooking, the child is not included in that. A lot of times if they go somewhere, they'll maybe leave the child with sometimes by themselves, depending, but usually this is formed really early, like up to about 2 years old. So they might leave the child with some stranger to take care of, and the stranger is just going to probably watch the child and make sure that they don't get hurt and feed them when necessary. There's no warmth or connection given. So the child basically grows up feeling very isolated from, there's no, the caregivers don't give the child any cuddles or FaceTime. When you have babies, you want to say, the child is cooing and you're cooing back at them and kind of talking to them, or kind of, interacting with the child as a baby. These caregivers don't do that. They don't have any touch time. They don't hold the child. So the child grows up lacking a lot of skin to skin connection, which is very important for children, guys. Very important for children, and also that eye-to-eye, face-to-face connection with their children. They don't have that. So these are the caregivers. They don't have that face-to-face or skin-to-skin connection with their children. So the child grows up is feeling quite, even though the people are there, the caregivers are there, you can see them, but they feel very isolated, because at some deep level in our biology, we know that we need that connection as people, as children, right? We are social beings, and so we need that kind of connection, that face to face. And so when you grow up without that kind of a connection. It's very difficult also to show that type of a connection in your adult relationships. So these individuals grow up and they cannot now show empathy to their partners or to their children. They cannot show warmth or connection to their children. Everything is just done almost task-based. And so this actually, the task-based connection for the caregivers and the child is the only real time that they might have some kind of a connection, if you call it that, connection. Because in terms of connection, it's really kind of, the child still feels separate from the caregivers. Because the child, there's no connection, there's no feedback kind of thing. It's like, I'm telling you what to do and you do it this way. And a lot of the times, if the child is not able to accomplish the task properly, that child is criticized and shamed and really made to feel really, less than. And so this child is always going to try to really do their best, because that is the only time that they will get some kind of a accolade from their caregivers. That's the only time they might feel some sort of importance. So this child now grows up to really they do very good work, because they are going to do the best that they can, because they're doing it at a root level for praise and for connection. That's the only way they had connection when they were younger. So they're doing a very good job, because that was the only time they got validation from the people that they cared about. And it was not a kind of a connection, a hug or anything like that. It was more like good job, and nothing in an, or do something else or whatever it is. It's the whole there's just no emotional connection to the child. It was all just task based. You do this and it's done this way. They give the instructions, and if they did well, yes, they get a little kudos and good job or whatever it might be. But if they don't, and they might treat them a little better if they feel that they are good at certain things. But that's the only validation that they get as they are growing up, because there was no touch, no hugs, no emotional connection. By looking, when you have the little babies, you're looking into their eyes and you're playing with them, you're touching their fingers, you're touching their toes, you're tickling them, you're doing all that kind of stuff. These kids did not experience that with their caregivers. And unfortunately, even when there are people all around in the house, the sad part is that they feel very alone. These children feel very alone, because their individuals, their caregivers are there, they're there, but they're so disconnected from the child that the child feels very alone, even when surrounded by so many people, right? They just feel alone. And a lot of times this also permeates throughout the entire family, in terms of if the parents are both dismissive people, or at least they're emotionally disconnected individuals, and they don't show it to the kids, the whole entire family is going to be very disconnected, and there's no cohesiveness in the family, because they don't show warmth, hugs, love, or any kind of emotion like that. It's just, I feed you, I clothe you, I put a roof over your head, I show you how to do certain things like cook or clean and whatever it is, give you the task-based stuff, and that's their preparation for that child to grow up. They don't recognize that these children need hugs and emotional connection, and how to be social connections with other people. Those are not evident in that kind of a relationship or in that kind of home. So basically, it's the most difficult part for the child is the emotional neglect, because we are created to be emotionally connected to each other, right? That's how kids or partners feel safe with each other. That emotional connection is totally missing as that child is growing up, because caregivers just did not know how to do that. they themselves, maybe that's the home that they grew up in, and now they never worked on themselves or healed or wondered if this is normal or not, and they didn't figure out what was going on while they're growing up, and saw anything wrong with how they're interacting in relationships, and so they just brought that now, and when they have families, they treat the kids the same. So these kids grow up they're dismissive, they're detached, they're insensitive. That's what they give off. They're insensitive. They're usually off on their own, in their own kind of world, and they appear to be standoffish, cold. They are usually workaholics because that's where they find value. And people might describe them as a lone wolf. They're always by themselves. They feel more comfortable actually being by themselves, right? Because that's how they grow up. They prefer to do things by themselves. They don't like it when people do things for them because they feel almost like they need to. They're owing that person who does something for them something, and they don't like to feel like they owe anyone anything. They have a lot of trouble being vulnerable. They just can't get that. They were never taught that. They never experienced that. So it's really difficult for them now in adult relationships. It's very difficult for them to be vulnerable and show empathy when somebody's going through some problems, because that was just not a part of their state when they were growing up. It was just not experienced, right? Maybe they go out and they see, and after, when they start going to school, maybe they saw this happening, and people, showing emotions and all that thing, and for them that was very foreign to them. That was very foreign to them because they just never had that as babies growing up, right? For them, being alone by themselves feel very natural. It comes naturally to them to be alone because they were really basically alone as they were children, and so they grew up feeling more comfortable being alone. And this is why you see in relationships these individuals will sometimes want a lot of alone time. They don't want, after they if the person that they're with requires more time, they start to feel smothered and it's suffocating for them. So you'll see these individuals always kind of like by themselves, right? They treasure, as a matter of fact, even if they're in love with that person, they will choose their alone time. If that person really needs a lot of time and they're suffocating them, this is how they feel, they will choose their alone time and their privacy over somebody they love. That's how difficult it is for them, and that's how that's how they grew up. That's all they knew, right? They really don't expect people to be there for them, so they try to do things by themselves. They don't want to depend on anyone. And so they sometimes too won't really, if you're having emotional stuff and you try to take it to them to kind of sort out, or to depend on them to kind of help you co-regulate, they because they are able to regulate themselves, but they actually self-regulate themselves by going to do some stuff that regulate themselves, like self-soothing is what they call it. These individuals feel very put upon to have somebody requiring of them to co-regulate, for them to draw them into their mess, as they might think of it, because they figure that if they can do it by themselves, then so can you. So because they just never had that connection of emotional connection to work through things and co-regulate with somebody else. They never did it. They never had that when they were children. So it's totally like foreign to them now as adults, and just even showing some kind of a warmth or love to their partners can be very difficult. And so in these relationships, this is why this attachment style have so many problems in intimate relationships, because they just cannot take that kind of all that emotional stuff that comes with intimate relationships, and then so you'll see that they go off by themselves a lot, and then of course leaving their partner wondering, what did I do? What's going on? What's just crazy. So they actually prefer to almost like focus more on inanimate things like plants, You know, it might be somebody who loved to garden, who loved to, who have pets, because pets are very, you know, they are loving, and they're, you know, they come to you. There's no requirement for this emotional thing and vulnerability with a pet. The pet will love you whether you treat them good or not. I mean, you know, they'll still be there. They're just unconditional love. For gardening is like there's no warmth or anything necessary. You know, because there's no thing required of them, the emotional connection required of them with a plant or some kind of a hobby that they have. And so you'll see individuals with this attachment style really form really you could call it bonds with gardening, and because it's the way that they feel more comfortable, because it does not require that emotional commitment and connection. They usually prefer to have, they feel more comfortable, I should say, in superficial relationships. So, you know, and they usually have very few of those. The relationships don't go very deep because depth, really emotional connection really requires that you dig deep in your emotions with each other. And so they don't usually have very you know, deep relationships. Their relationships are usually superficial, and they feel more comfortable with people who will accept them as you know, with that type of relationship, that they don't delve too much into emotions or vulnerabilities or anything like that. So because of that, a lot of times they might prefer one-night stands and or masturbation, stuff like that, which does not require any kind of a connection with anyone. You know, so the one-night stand is just, you just do that, whatever it is you do, and that's it, and then you don't see that person again, right? So that is how they will prefer those kind of if you call that relationship. I'm not sure what you call that, but anyway, that's what they would prefer because of that lack of the fear. It's really a fear of the emotional connection, because they never got that when they were younger, and to them it was dangerous, because if they sought it when they were younger, they were usually criticized or shamed around it. It's the other thing that is weird is that it's kind of weird, because sometimes they will people who say with a divorce, after the divorce happens or a breakup happens, they will actually feel relieved, because now they no longer have to deal with that emotional stuff, right? And so they might actually feel relieved. Even sadly, guys, in death, they may even feel, if somebody, it was a connection that was really emotional and stuff, they will feel relieved. After a while, they'll come around and recognize that, and then kind of settle off. But at the beginning, one of the feelings that they can have is a sense of relief. So a lot of these guys, I want to tell you and to make sure that you know that a lot of these things are done or happen to them beyond their awareness. Now, it's not like they go out to do this thing. It's just something beyond their awareness, because they just never processed these things and they never dealt with it. And so until they become aware of all of these things that are happening and what's causing maybe a lot of relationships to fail for them, and they now want to start working on themselves. It's usually in the working on themselves, working on themselves and starting to change and recognizing the shortfalls of their emotional connection and issues that they have, that they actually will become aware of, wow, this is how I used to behave. But before that, a lot of things is done almost, be underneath the radar, because it's subconsciously tied to their childhood, and they never recognize it because it was never processed. So guys, I hope that this kind of helps to give you a perspective from the parenting or the caregiving side of this equation of how a child grows up to have that dismissive avoidant attachment style, and also how hopefully will also help new parents having babies, because this attachment style forms very early, up to about 2 years old. That child is just, all those experiences are just being processed. But the thing about it is that because their frontal lobe and their hippocampus is not fully online to make sense of what is going on and to make a choice and to process, they just accept everything is just embedded into their implicit memory, which is beyond where you can make sense of anything. And so it forms your subconscious base from where you now respond to in your adult relationships. So guys, I hope that makes some sense and that gives you a little more clarification on the dismissive individual. And please don't forget again to like this video, share it with a friend who you think might need to see this, or just share it, and hopefully someone who might not even you might not even know needs it will learn something from this. So like, share, subscribe, and please hit the notification bell so that you are notified when I upload a new video. Take care, guys, and have a great weekend. This weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.